I've not really covered differentials on this channel so far. Those low-owned players that, if they do well, will propel you up the leaderboard. So here we are, the best differentials in Euro 2024 fantasy football. I'll just start by saying my definition of a differential in this game is any player that's below sort of 10% owned. So all of these players are below 10, some even lower than that. So starting off then, Wout Faes. Now, it looks like he's going to be a first choice starter for Belgium. Only 6% selected in the game so far. And I think, bar Mittelstadt, he's probably the other best 4 million defender in the game. Like I said, should be starting for Belgium. He's really good on the ball. I've seen him for Leicester a couple of times this season. I've got a season ticket in the Championship for Bristol City. He's made blazing runs through our entire team from defence before, and he's also really good in the air. He's a good threat from set pieces. And when you look at those fixtures, they're pretty good. Like, you could see some clean sheets there for Belgium. One thing I would say, just in general, the quality of players that Belgium have in their defence for this Euros is not as high as it has been in previous seasons. So Wout Faes particularly, I don't think he's that good of a defender. He's really good on the ball and going forward from set pieces, etc. But I do think he's a little bit suspect defensively, so he could be the reason that Belgium concede some goals. Secondly, Mittelstadt has all the hype for Germany, and rightly so, looking like the starting left back at 4 million. But I also think Jonathan Tah of Leverkusen and, of course, Germany could be a really good option too. He's 0.5 million more. I think it makes sense to go with Mittelstadt and Tah if you want to do it. But I think a German double up in defence could be a nice way to play it. He's going to be partnering Rudiger, who is obviously one of the best centre-backs in the world. He's had an undefeated season this year with Leverkusen. And yeah, they've got Scotland, Hungary and Switzerland. I think they could keep some clean sheets in those games, particularly considering they're the home nation, right? It's a favourable group. I think they could do well, and Tah could definitely pick up some points. And just a general comment about the guy, he's absolutely massive. I think he's 6'5", 6'6". So he's going to be a real threat in my mind from set pieces, and I really like the thought of having him in my team. So rather than talk about a player next, I just wanted to go through the Elvenify clean sheet odds. I'll leave a link to Elvenify in the description. They've got plenty more Euros content of this nature, which is super helpful for fantasy football players. I'm not going to go through the clean sheets one by one, but I wanted to show you those clean sheet odds just to help you decide teams you might want to be picking from to allow you to find your own differentials, if you like, from those teams. So looking at match day one, I'll look at teams sort of above 40% to keep a clean sheet. So Belgium and Germany, 42 and 40%. Italy, 53. Got Denmark on 44. Netherlands, 39. So those are the sorts of teams you should be considering for match day one. And I think there are definitely some differentials from those defences as well. Belgium and Germany, again, both are above 40% for match day 2. Croatia, not really many people picking Croatian defenders. They've got, I see, only a few teams with above 52%. They've got 52% to keep a clean sheet in match day 2. And Serbia, 41% in match day 2 as well. So there could be some differentials there. Match day 3, England, 53%. Portugal, 45%. Spain, 54%. France, 43%. That's kind of a lot for 40 plus or 50 plus, if you like. But yeah, I think from those teams alone with decent clean sheet odds, you can definitely find some differentials in defence. Next up is a player I've spoken about a fair amount on this channel already, but I really like Granit Xhaka in this game. Only 4% owned, should be taking some of the set pieces. Get an extra point for goals from outside the box. I think he's definitely got that in the locker. We've seen that for Leverkusen this season. He's averaging 7 ball recoveries per game in qualifying, which is worth a fair few bonus points. I think that's going to be a really strong point scoring attribute throughout the tournament, is players that get decent ball recoveries, because goals and assists, they're not necessarily guaranteed, right? But a defensive midfielder, for example, the likes of Xhaka, or just a general midfielder who is a tough tackler, it's almost guaranteed that he's going to make a good amount of ball recovery. So I really like having that stat to bank on. I'm pretty sure he's the Switzerland national team captain now, so he's going to be absolutely nailed, right? He's been, as we know, unreal for Leverkusen this season. And I just have a feeling he's going to be playing fairly advanced for them and just have a really strong tournament in general. So at 4% owned, 6 million, I think Xhaka is a really nice differential. Continuing on with the Switzerland theme, is Shaqiri. Now, he should be a starter for Switzerland in the tournament. He always seems to play well whenever Switzerland are in an international tournament. He is the first choice penalty and free kick taker. Like I said, he could share some free kicks with Xhaka. I think that's a genuine possibility. But he is the Swiss designated penalty taker. I'd also say, just there's a little bit of doubt around him. I think prefer Xhaka over Shaqiri, even though Shaqiri is the penalty taker. He's a little bit cheaper. And I also think that just due to his age and the level that he's playing at now, he's in the MLS, I believe. I'm not necessarily sure he's going to be on the pitch for 90 minutes every game, which I think Xhaka will be. And of course, doesn't have the ball recovery points to jack him up. But at 2% selected, you know, for the amount of goals he's had and how well he's played in international tournaments gone by, I still think he's a good option this year. Now, Çalhanoğlu is nailed to start for Turkey. He's on all of the set pieces, pens, free kicks and corners. And he's got Georgia in match day 1. I think that's one of the best fixtures you can ask for in the tournament, right? Now, a lot of people have got Gula, if that's how you correctly pronounce it, the wonder kid from Real Madrid, who's only 6 million for Turkey. But I actually prefer Çalhanoğlu. He's only 5% selected, and he's on all of the set pieces. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen clips of this guy's free kicks, but he is one of the best free kick takers in world football by far. And I think if he gets one in a good position outside of the box, particularly against Georgia, when you don't think they've got the best goalkeeper, for example, I think he could be scoring some. You know, the fact that he's on pens as well just means in any game, if a player gets fouled on the box, he's got a chance of scoring, right? I just really like having penalty takers in my team. And I think it's worth the extra 0.5 million. I also think he's going to play 90 minutes every game. And he plays sort of relatively deep in the midfield as well. So I think he could well get some ball recovery points as well. So Çalhanoğlu, I think, is a really nice differential at just 5% owned. Right, I'm going to try and pronounce this name correctly. Kvaratskhelia, something like that. 4% owned for Georgia. Similar sort of story, really, with Çalhanoğlu. He's on all of the set pieces, penalties, free kicks and corners. And the first couple of fixtures that he has, when you bear in mind that I think most Euro fantasy managers will be using a chip match day 2 and 3 or just match day 3. I think most will be using one on match day 3, right? You only really have to worry about the first 2 fixtures when selecting your team. And he's got Czech Republic, well, Czechia second up and Turkey first up. And if you remember Turkey from the World Cup in 2022, they were not very good, particularly defensively. So he could do well. I think he's obviously nailed to start for Georgia. He's their most important player by far. Going to play 90 minutes on every single set piece. Decent fixtures. We all know how good of a player he is. I think the one sort of risk that comes with selecting him is the fact, obviously, Georgia are not the strongest international team. But also, he's really the only sort of big name, dangerous player they actually have. And, you know, that could lead to oppositions just targeting him and trying to mark him out of games, which you can do. And then obviously take the risk of other players doing damage. But I do think there's a risk of that where he gets like sort of double teamed pretty much every time he gets the ball. But, you know, you got to think the fact he's on all set pieces, nailed on to start, a couple of decent fixtures to kick off. He is a decent option and only 4% owned. Bit of a running thing with these players, aren't there? Christian Eriksen is on all of the set pieces for Denmark. Pens, corners and free kicks. I still think he's going to be a nailed on starter. And I still think, well, he's been considered Denmark's talisman, if you like, in previous tournaments. Whether that quite holds true this time round, he's obviously aged a little bit since previous tournaments. I still think that's probably the case. They do, of course, have a better team than previous tournaments to Denmark. I think he's a really good option. You know, he's on all of the set pieces, got really decent fixtures, match day 1 and 3. Yeah, really like him as an option and only 2% owned as well. The one thing I would say, just with other options they have in midfield and age and fitness related with Eriksen, I don't necessarily think he's going to play 90 minutes every game, but that doesn't take away from the fact he's a really good option. Now, Chiesa up front for Italy is only 5% owned, and apparently Jorginho, according to the manager at least, is no longer the Italy penalty taker. He's missed 3 or 4 in a row, and I think that leaves the door open for Chiesa to take some. I think he's probably Italy's best attacker. He might actually genuinely be their best player at the moment. Had a real impact in Euro 2020 before he picked up an injury, and I think without a star striker like Immobile of previous tournaments, they do have Scamacca, who is another differential that could be worth picking. I just think there's going to be more pressure put on, I guess, to Chiesa to get on the end of chances and really be their goal scorer. Yeah, I really like him as an option. Yes, match day 2 and 3, they've got some fairly tough fixtures, but you know, if you're looking for a one match day punt, he's got Albania, which is probably the best fixture in the entire tournament that you could ask for. You could pick him for that week and then use one of your free transfers, if you so wish, to take him out for match day 2 for someone else. But yeah, player of his quality, playing up front for it well. In the forward positions for Italy, only 5% owned, likely on penalties. I think he's a really nice option. So I'm just going to leave up a predicted goals table for each match day by player. This is another stat by Elvenify, and hopefully through this you can identify some other potential differentials, right? I'm looking at Schick, Mitrovic, Morata, Dovbyk, Gakpo. They're all up there as expected to do quite well in the group stages. But one thing I would say, and it's a general point that I've made around differentials in this game throughout, I don't think you should be filling your team with 11 differentials, right? I think you should pick 7 or 8 players that you, well, maybe even more than that, like 10 players that you think are going to be absolutely nailed on to do really well. And then the remaining picks could be slightly punty. But when you got the likes of Mbappe, Kane, Ronaldo and Lukaku, they're so far ahead of all of the other players in terms of predicted goals across the group stages that I just can't look away from having at least 2 of them, right? Maybe your third forward could be a pick. But having the likes of, for example, Kane and Mbappe, I mean, they're twice as likely, apparently, according to these odds, to score than Schick, for example. So I just think with differentials, yes, you can go for them. Yes, I think they'll help you, but don't fill your team with them. Fill your team with guaranteed starters and good picks, and then just sprinkle some differentials on top. Alright then, that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments what you think of those differentials. And if there are any that I missed, please let me know in the comments if there are any others you would like to suggest. Yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and want to see more from me, you can subscribe to the Goal to Goal channel, which should be just about there on your screen. Until then, I'll catch you in my next video. Thank you for watching.